Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. I am feeling a lot better, so I appreciate all the support out there and the well wishes. But we got a lot to talk about in this update. We're going to walk you through the next 7 days, plus take a look at your overall tropical outlook. So let's take a look at the setup going forward. You can actually see we've got 3 areas of concern. First one highlighted across portions of Red River into North Texas. That convective complex shifts off into East Texas later on this afternoon into the early evening time frame. It'll eventually head off into Louisiana. Then there's a secondary complex up there across portions of the Central Plains into Kansas, as well as into Missouri, with some more heavier rain and some stronger wind gusts. But also along the East Coast, they're dealing with another area of flooding rains. They've just been impacted greatly over the last 7 to 10 days. This area has just been crushed with just torrential rains. And unfortunately, we definitely have more on the table today. Not just heavy rain, folks. We're talking some severe storms and even some tornadic activity as well. And we've already seen several tornado warnings in this region. So here's the breakdown. So here's the first convective complex is going to be diving east southeastward into the later afternoon, early evening time frame across portions of Louisiana. Then we have that secondary system up further north across portions of Kansas that shifts off into Missouri through Illinois into the evening time frame. And then we have the activity along the East Coast, essentially from Virginia all the way up to portions of New York City, back into portions of Rhode Island, getting into the Boston region with some strong to severe storms and even some tornadic activity. In fact, some of these areas have already seen some tornado warnings within this region. So we do have a 2 to 5% probability of seeing a possible sped up tornado within this region. So definitely be on high alert. So you're dealing with all 3 modes of severe storms, and then you've got that flooding risk. So it's just going to be a nasty day up in this region. So it's definitely probably a good day just to kind of stay inside and just get yourself out of harm's way, because it's just going to be nasty outside and dealing with all that severe storms. But there's the flood risk, folks. I mean, this has just been an insane amount of problems up here across the Northeast, and there's several more systems that we're going to be talking about that's definitely of concern. So it's a compounding effect. Obviously, the soils are really saturating right now, but the main concern this afternoon into the evening time frame would be across the New York City area, back into portions of Massachusetts, back into Connecticut, into the Rhode Island region, all the way up into portions of Vermont and New Hampshire, and even heading up into Maine. These areas will be crushed with possibly up to 2 to 4 inches, even some isolated 5-inch amounts is definitely not out of the question. And that's just for today, folks. And actually, there's several more systems just in the next 7 days. But the heat is the real deal across a good part of South Texas, but especially into the desert Southwest today, across California. Phoenix topped out a record high 118 yesterday. They're going for 119 today, folks. So Death Valley is trying to hit 130. They hit 126 yesterday. This is some dangerous heat, and it's something that you haven't seen in a long, long time, even in these regions being so high. I think the all-time record high is 117. In Las Vegas, they're going to be really close to that area, that zone today. So definitely just some incredible heat. And again, just one of those days that you want to be able to just hang out and just hang inside, because just put yourself out of harm's way, because heat is nothing to play with, folks. That can really get to you in a short amount of time. So definitely use all high precautions within these regions. And so let's take a look at the setup going forward as far as the rain amount that we could be seeing between now and tomorrow morning. So yeah, here's the latest update from some of the high resolution guidance. This is compounding on top of what you've already seen just this morning. We're looking at for another possibly 1 to 2 inches across portions of New York City, get into the Bridgeport region, back into the Hartford region, up into Springfield. These areas just been crushed. They're going to be adding to these totals. So definitely, 1 to 2 inches is definitely out of the question. Probably some isolated areas of even 3 to 4 inches can't be ruled out within this region. But it's really just been a crazy setup. So further south, we've just had this ridge, this dominating ridge, and it's been kind of playing like a little air hockey back and forth from Texas to Arizona, and right now it's mainly parked over Arizona, and then further to the north we've got these systems that come off the Aleutian Islands, and they literally just sit and spin. They spin and spin and spin, and they're up and over the ridge. And so you've got this warm air further to the south, a lot of sinking air, very difficult to rain in that type of atmosphere. But you also have an energized Gulf of Mexico, very warm sea surface temperatures. And that just, as these systems kind of come through and as they pinwheel east to southeastward, there's a lot of lift, and the water content values has just been insane, up to 2 inches per hour. So it doesn't take much. Once you add lift to that type of atmosphere, that creates like the sponge effect, and then man, it just really just pours down in your house, and it doesn't have any let up in sight. So if you take a look at the setup here, you can see these little systems, right? So you've got this area spin, and then to the south side, that's the lift. So you got the lift associated with it across portions of the Dakotas. And then you have another piece of energy that's moving across of, portions of, Iowa, getting into Missouri. And then you have the Northeast systems that has that little bit of a dip that pulls in some of that sea surface temperature anomalies, that very warm, soupy air mass, and then just dumps it inland. And because you've got an atmosphere that's basically essentially uncapped, it doesn't take much in this environment when you're talking 2-inch per hour rainfall rates to produce some torrential rains and some flooding rains within these regions. So yeah, the setup even into Tuesday again, folks, another type of situation, right? So we have these little series of complexes that are coming across. There's the lift mechanism. So within the heating of the atmosphere, as it bubbles up in the atmosphere, then it just pours into portions of Missouri, back into Illinois, back into southern Indiana, back into portions of Kentucky. And then you have that secondary piece of energy again. This is not today, folks. This is Tuesday. So this is another setup going into Tuesday timeframe across literally the same exact areas of upstate New York, back into Vermont and New Hampshire, just back into Maine again. These areas have just been really just crushed as of late. And look at the setup. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Been very high and dry, ridge of high pressure locked over the West Coast, a lot of sinking air, very difficult to rain in that atmosphere. And then once you get these convective complexes traversing across, this is the rainfall over the last 14 days, folks. Oklahoma City has seen almost 9 inches. That's to like number 4 all-time wettest July on record. These areas, you can look as these dive east southeastward back into portions of Arkansas. Some of these areas have picked up a foot of rain through Mississippi. Again, some of these areas have picked up a foot of rain even into Georgia. Some of these areas into Alabama. These areas into the Florida Panhandle. This has just been, crushing rainfall with these mesoscale convective systems as they traverse from the northwest down to the east southeast. And then you have that further north mechanism, maxing out at 16 inches. That's just in the last 14 days for some of these areas in isolated pockets. That's a lot, insane rainfall. And then that's not good when we're talking, we have all these other systems that are going to be unfolding across these same regions that really don't need any more rainfall, because obviously the creeks are swollen, everything is saturated. But here's the setup for Tuesday, right? So further to the south, right? You've got the dominating ridge really highlighted over California, Nevada, really over Arizona. But like I mentioned, it's been playing air hockey with Texas and Arizona. Now the air hockey puck is going to be backing over portions of Texas. So that puts the very high warm anomalies back over Texas. It puts Oklahoma back into the hundreds. It puts most of Texas back into the hundreds by the time we head into Tuesday, as that ridge of high pressure will just come back with a vengeance and sink and expand and really dominate for a good part of your work week ahead. So underneath that, not much happening, right? So it's just going to be in the northern periphery of that ridge. So where you have that weakness and where the ridge is not dominating, you're going to have these mesoscale convective systems form on the northern side of that ridge and then dive east southeastward and then produce some very heavy rain if you happen to be underneath with that area. So yes, as we head into Wednesday, there's the setup for southern Illinois again, back into Kentucky again, and then we've got these series of energies, right? We've got this other series of energy that's coming across the Great Lakes. That's going to be coming across, going to be producing probably some more heavy rain by the time we head into Thursday for the Northeast. But underneath that, there's the temperatures. So as this ridge of high pressure starts to come back, finally it puts portions of the Southeast more into play with that ridge. And so now it's going to be more coast to coast. We're talking California through much of the Southern Plains, much of the Southeast, and much of the southern regions are going to be locked over a good part of the upper 90s, well into the triple digits across these regions. Some of these are going to be seeing some of your highest temperatures you've seen so far of the season, especially as I think some of these areas across the Southeast, and that'll be coming up on the day on your Thursday. But look at the hazard map, folks. That's kind of rare to get a coast-to-coast map like this from just these widespread hazardous outlook heat indices for 15 states across the southern region. So that's a dominating ridge of high pressure. That takes a massive heat dome to be able to do something like that. And so, but further to the north, that just puts the training aspect of these storms and all the vertical lift further to the north. It puts these same areas more in line to get more heavy rainfall. And I think that's what's going to happen as we unfold, as we transfer into maybe Tuesday timeframe. So we get a break, you get these 1 to 2 day breaks, and then by the time we head into Thursday, we've got that vertical lift coming back into play. And so yes, more heavy rain possibly for portions of Pennsylvania, back into New Jersey again, up along the East Coast here. So we have to be concerned about this other setup that might be coming on the table for your Thursday time frame. But out in the tropics, let's take a look at that, because we do have a couple systems, right? So there's Don hanging on its last leg. It's a subtropical storm that got named, but it's not going to affect any land, and it's basically going to say goodbye after today probably. But we also have another area of concern out here in the open waters of the Atlantic. There's a lot of Saharan dust. This thing's got a lot to hinder it from developing, but some of the guidance is hinting that this is going to continue to westbound and might actually sneak in towards the Lesser Antilles and in about a week or so. So the good thing is we got a lot of real estate coming off the Africa coast by the time we get to the United States, so we got plenty of time to track these things and watch their every movement and keep you well ahead of the storm. So if you take a look at the overall ensemble guidance on this particular setup, of the European guidance, most of its members have it continue westbound, right? So it might get into the Lesser Antilles. This is over a 10-day time span. So about day 7, it could get towards the Lesser Antilles again, maybe near Puerto Rico by day 8 or 9. But overall, for the next 10 days, we'll have to watch this little tropical type wave or entity as it is right now, as it continues first westbound. But other than that, besides Don demise, there's not much else happening into the overall tropics. So but yes, once we get beyond that point, you can see the next for next week, not much happening across a good part of the Caribbean. But once we get into that July 26th through the end of the month time frame, as this looks to be maybe possibly turning northward, we'll have to watch this area of concern if it's trying to get its act together, by then. But again, it's a long time to watch this particular tropical wave out there. So here's the breakdown over the next 7 days. So there's the ridge of high pressure, folks. So eventually it's going to take advantage literally from coast to coast, right? So, and that's a lot of heat and a lot of sinking air, and probably plenty of records going to be crushed this week and the week ahead. And then further north, that's where the cooler air is, right? So, and that's where the instability is. So it's away from the ridge. So if you're away from that ridge, you're going to be more in line to seeing some showers and thunderstorm activity, probably some severe at times. but definitely some more flooding rains are going to be impacting some of these areas across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast over the next 7 days. And here's the rain probabilities, over the 7 days. So where you see the white, that's not any rain, folks. That's a lot of sinking air and no rain to speak of under that ridge of high pressure. And then where you see that weakness, where the ridge weakens, that's where the traverse of these heavier rains are going to be. So across portions of Louisiana, along the I-20 corridor into the Florida region. The southeast gets hit a little bit with possibly 1 to 2 inches, but it's mainly going to be along these northern branches across this northern tier, across portions of Nebraska, getting into Missouri, back into Illinois, into Indiana, and into Kentucky through West Virginia, and then of course across the East Coast that we'll definitely have to be concerned about more heavy rain, as it looks to have this event possibly Tuesday and another setup into Thursday as we get into week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do hit the share button on this video. Let others know of this channel. Definitely hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch me next update where I protect you for and after storm.